Head coach Doug Peterson said Trevor Lawrence has been a little bit banged up and it may affect how they call plays. I'll tell you all about that and what I think in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, good people? Thank you and welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page, that is Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And if you're at your desk sneaking around on a platform, or if you're driving around in your car, wherever you get that podcast, make sure you check back in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode once we drop. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use the code all lowercase lockedonnfl for a first deposit match up to $100. And I want to say a special shout out to our everydayers for making our show the everyday show that it is, and you can be one too. All you got to do is come back every single day. Here's what we're going to go over today. Doug Peterson says Trevor being banged up. He basically said Trevor being banged up kind of limits how they call plays. Is that good enough for you? Does that back you off some of the narratives about play calling? Probably not. Probably shouldn't, right? They did add Trevor Lawrence to the injury report, and he hasn't been on the injury report since he initially banged up. I think he was on it earlier, that he was a little bit limited, but that might be in response to what's going on in Cincinnati. By the way, I'll talk about what's going on in Cincinnati and Cleveland and even Baltimore to a certain extent. Those three teams play the Jaguars. We'll hit that in segment 3 with their injury situation. We're going to talk about how this actually affects play calling, or how it could, because we're going to assume that Doug is telling us the truth. We don't sit here and speculate that somebody's not, but he's never lied to us. So we're going to tell you how it affects play calling and how that affects some of the things that you've seen that you don't like. And quarterback one playing hurt. If he's injured, it's probably not going to go away because they've already had a bye week. And if he's still banged up, maybe it's something they need to clean up in the offseason, but it's something he can play through. Is he good enough to play through that? Talk about that and give you a little bit of an injury report, too, on guys that won't play this weekend versus Tennessee. But back to the top. Every single day I listen to these press conferences, and every single time I listen to Doug Peterson, I sit here and I go, somebody's going to ask him. Somebody's going to ask him about Press Taylor. Or I say, even if nobody asks him or asks him about Press Taylor, he's going to say something that's going to let you know how he feels about the offense not being successful. That is far different from what the fans have been wanting to hear. Fans have pretty much been wanting to take the reins back of play calling, or to come out and say, I'm not going to say fans want him to say this, but I kind of feel like fans want him to say, yeah, Press ain't getting it done, so we're going to try something else. It happened yesterday in Carolina with Thomas Jones, who was a disciple of, amongst a lot of people, Mark Richt, a lot of people, but lately Sean McVay, and out with the Rams. And I think that's a big deal because Thomas Jones, although he played running back in college, coached that position in college, he was coaching tight ends for the Rams. And I know there's some people that go, how do you go from being a running back who turns into a tight ends coach to an offensive coordinator? Would it surprise you that Sean McVay was the tight ends coach when he was on Mike Shanahan's staff, or the older, Mike Shanahan's staff, along with Kyle Shanahan and Zach Taylor, I believe, was there, and a whole bunch of these other guys. Mike McDaniel was there. So my thing is, that's where Sean McVay once was. And I think when a coach kind of puts you where he started and where he used to be, that there's this expectation that you can track out the same way. But Thomas Jones was removed, and he says he understands it. It's a big boy situation. He gets it. He understands it, and all of this stuff. And Reich is another guy who was Reich was let go and got another job right away. He's sort of and then him and Doug Peterson are kind of joined at the hip a little bit. Same staff. He was on Doug Peterson's staff when Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. I think there's some people that want Doug Peterson to do the exact same thing, and I don't think that's going to happen. So we have to get to the point where we accept the fact that Trevor Lawrence is probably not going to be 100% healthy all year, that it's going to affect how the Jaguars call plays. It also sets up for us to know that, sometimes we don't know everything. Sometimes we don't know the why. Why isn't Trevor running? That's why. Why aren't they calling more rollouts? Last week during the game, I was live tweeting and I said, or live Xing or posting or whatever it is. And I said, I want to see more waggles. That's where you reverse out one way and come back the other way to take advantage of a team that's really getting upfield. And then you kind of drag a guy across the formation because while everybody's going one way, he's going another, and you trick him, right? Well, can Trevor do that right now with his knee? I think he can because he can run. But here's the thing you have to ask. Can Trevor do that and effectively throw the ball in the right spot while he's on the move? Only the Jaguar coaches know that, but I always tell people there's always a little bit more to the story than you think. And if they know that there's a little bit of a limit on him and they are calling plays a certain way because of it, then that itself is a reason why not only you might see a product on the field that isn't very good, but it also might be a reason why the coach is hesitant to make the changes that the fans think that they should possibly make, or won't even speak out against it, is because they know what they're dealing with behind the scenes. Add that to the point where Doug Peterson has repeatedly talked about how the offensive line, the mainstays are Fortner and Sheriff. They've been there the whole time, but how Anton Harrison is a rookie, and then the other side, the left side of the line, those guys haven't really been around each other. It's been a little bit topsy-turvy and trying to figure out what's best. So when you add all of these things together, there's a lot of little nitpicky things that once you add them together, they become one gigantic big problem. So it's like a boil growing under your skin. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's small, but once it starts to do what it's going to do, all of these things come together and they become big. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about whether or not and how it affects the play of Trevor Lawrence by him playing hurt. We're going to do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you guys know about PrizePicks. That's right. PrizePicks is the sponsor for today's show. You heard me at the very beginning tell you that PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers, man. Instead of battling thousands of players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on between 2 and 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Now, what I love doing, man, is testing my skills on PrizePicks this season. I love it because I think it's the most exciting way to play it, and you will too. But if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is it's the most simple way to play, and I can make picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds, and I do it every single week. Here's what you got to do. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I'll repeat that. It's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use LockedOnNFL in all lowercase for a deposit match up to $100. Make sure you check out PrizePicks. Okay, man, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. Rainy Friday. I hope this weather clears up. I don't care if it rains Sunday. I don't want it to rain on y'all when you tailgate, but I'm talking about as far as between 1 and 4. I don't care if it rains or not. The Jaguars are better than the Titans. They can play them in an ice skating ring, and they should win that game Sunday. The question is how does a banged up Trevor Lawrence, now that we all knew he had something going on, but we didn't think it was affecting him that way, right? Because there wasn't anything on the injury report. But how does a banged up Trevor Lawrence really affect Jacksonville? Well, one, I don't know if other teams knew that he was banged up. I don't. I do know this, though, unless you're Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or maybe Josh Allen or Justin Fields, outside of those guys, teams want to see those golden boy quarterbacks, especially the ones with long hair flowing like sunshine. They want to see guys like that. I wish you would take off and run and forget to slide, and I get to put this shoulder across the bow, head across the bow, and put that shoulder right in your rib cage. They want those guys. This is a league where you can't hit or touch quarterbacks. And you mean to tell me you think that these defensive guys don't want to see that quarterback scrambling? You might not want to see it when you're an all-out man-to-man, or you're some kind of blitz and y'all miss. And now this dude that runs this 4.5, 4.6 is out there wide open running like a gazelle. No, you don't want to see it. But they'd rather Trevor Lawrence run the ball than throw it. The bottom line, they'd rather run it and throw it. But we're talking about a guy using his legs to create more space so he can have a better throw, make a better throw, get somebody open, maybe challenge a different part of the field, put pressure on once the linebackers see you running, they got to kind of commit. They got to hang in there. They can't keep following whoever they're following. You can use pump fakes like boxers use feints, all of those things. I think he's affected a lot by his ability to move around in the pocket more than scramble. It was uneasy watching him move around in the pocket, and he looked like he didn't have a whole bunch of pocket presence. And that could be attributed to the injury, or he's thinking about it and he doesn't want somebody to hit him low or fall on his leg while he's standing there in the middle of all these 300-pound bodies. Makes sense that he wouldn't be as efficient as he normally has. There, the naysayers is going to make it sound like this is all one big excuse. Could be, because I hadn't heard any of this until this morning or late last night. Could be that they're sitting there trying to figure out. I mean, just Monday, Doug was like, I don't know what's going on, man. We ain't executing. We ain't this, we ain't that. Coaches are real hesitant to talk about injuries, right? And maybe it's something that they were just simply sitting there trying to work through. But I don't know, man. It just looks like to me this is all, while true, because we knew Trevor had an injury. It still sounds a little, and it feels a little convenient right now to give that answer instead of just come out and saying, look, they have said they got to play better, because quarterbacks get hurt or injured or nicked up. But if you can play, they're going to expect the rest of the team to play better. And maybe they just don't have the edge that they need because Trevor can't fully be Trevor. They're talking about not throwing the ball deep down the field. I think a knee would have something to do with that. If you're banged up and you can't plant, or you're not careful, or you're not the careful is the wrong word, but if you're not able to confidently step up into the pocket where it could put you at a little bit of danger, I get that too. I also get not lining them up under center on short yard situations. See, all of these things, all of these play calling things, and all of these things could be affected by Trevor Lawrence having a bum knee. And I don't mean like a terrible bum knee, like a Dan Marino knee or Joe Namath knee, but I mean he's just not completely healthy right now from a fall he took earlier in the season. So, sure, I could see why, that could be a problem. I kind of wondered that a little bit too. And like I said, it's not the Jaguars' place to tell it's not necessarily the fans, but because you can't tell the fans anything without telling the enemy, right? The people that you're going to play against, the ops. It's not other than adhering to the NFL rule that says you have to list all injuries. It's not their It's not their job. It's not in their job description to tell people how they're supposed to beat them. So I get it and I understand that. But it just seems like now with fans who, one, already don't believe Press Taylor called plays last year, two, that think that Doug is allowing Press to do this because he's his friend and that he has this blind loyalty. I know that there are people that are going to be very, very skeptical of the timing of announcing the fact that Trevor Lawrence is banged up. Ironically, he got banged up running away from a play. He does something sometimes that I really, really don't like. And he's actually made a couple of plays doing this, but still, Trevor's a right-handed quarterback, right? Like I'm facing the screen if you're watching on YouTube. I really hate when he's running to his left. He's running to his left, sometimes to the short side of the field, the boundary side of the field. There's not enough room for him to do or see anything. He's actually made a couple of throws that way, but for the most part, just throw it away. He got caught. Somebody came from behind him. He didn't see him, kind of tripped him up, twisted his legs up, fell on him, and he's been banged up ever since. He was over sitting on the sideline in that game. I can't remember who it was. It was a home game, and they were over rubbing his knee and shaking his knee. They were rubbing his knee, making sure he's going to be okay and all of this stuff, and I'm sitting there just like, man, I remember when it happened, I was just hoping that it was not a truly, truly big deal. Didn't think it was. Come to find out, it may be one of the reasons why Trevor Lawrence is having such a very, very difficult time. So we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about him. How effective can he be playing injured? Does that? We're going to assume that Doug Peterson is correct and that Trevor, since they just had a bye week, and he didn't get, apparently didn't get any better, that maybe it's something that's going to take a lengthy time of rest. And so you won't get that until the end of the year. So the question is how confident are you that with QB1 playing injured, how confident are you that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be able to do anything to fulfill those goals that we all, and I say we because I'm included, that we all thought that they were going to be able to get to? That's something that we need to monitor and we need to make sure of. But I'm going to take your opinion on it. I'm going to give you mine here in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. First, I want to talk about DoorDash, man. DoorDash has been a lifesaver. I remember in 2020, they really were a lifesaver because they were bringing food to my house like every single day, right? And they never let me down. Well, now I moved to another area, and there are some areas that don't have their own. There are some restaurants here in this new area that don't have their own delivery service. I got mine. It's called DoorDash. That's right. You can get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. Now pay attention. LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. I'm going to read it again. 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCK23. That's LOCKED 23. Subject to change, terms apply. All right, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you tune in every single day where it's your team every day. And we always thank you for making us your first listen. Here's your next listen. Your second listen should be, I want you to pay attention to this. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 coverage. Covering the top sports stories around the country and of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel. And if you're here with me, that means you are subscribed to Locked On Jaguars. And if you're not, go ahead and do it right now. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to an audio podcast, wherever you get your podcast, it's your team every day. And we call it that for a reason, because it is your team. We try to give you the best stories, try to have the finger on the pulse of the football team that is the Jacksonville Jaguars that you love so much. And there's been so much talk over the last 3-4 weeks about the offensive struggles that Press Taylor's name has come up often in a bunch of those conversations. So most of the week, we've been trying to dissect, with the exception of Thursday, where we did our crossover with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans. We've been really trying to dissect and hang on to and find the words or listen to the words to find out exactly what's going on. And if we can't find out what's going on, we're trying to find out if they know what's going on with the offense. Most fans have just assumed that it's Press Taylor and the perceived change in the process of play calling from last year. I have been hesitant to just put it on one thing. Not that I think you're necessarily wrong. It's just that when you don't definitively know, there may be more to it. Doug Peterson takes the coaching reins back and they do the same thing. And then it's like, okay, we did all of that for nothing. That wasn't what the problem was. And as a Jaguar fan, I was thinking that maybe, we're kind of all tired of doing that. Remember, we're going to get rid of Gus Bradley. Just get rid of Gus. But first, it was get rid of Jed Fish, right? Then it was we're going to get rid of Gus Bradley, and we're going to keep Doug Marrone. And remember all the times when they just kept keeping little remnants of the past, and they did it this time when they fired Urban. They kept Trent Baalke. And one of the reasons I didn't want them to do that is because I wanted them to let everything go and just start over, right? But I was tired of the little small fixes. And I'll always be fatigued by having small fixes. Now, I'm not telling you that you always need to clean house, right? And I'm not, some people think that I'm saying fire Doug Peterson. I'm not saying fire Doug Peterson. What I'm saying is ultimately Doug's responsibility to know what's going on. And I give him too much of the benefit of the doubt. Well, I'm going to always give him the benefit of the doubt because of the way that he's carried himself and how honest he's been and how transparent he's been. That the reason why he's not talking about Press Taylor has nothing to do with being sinister or nothing to do with being sneaky. I think he just doesn't believe that that's the problem. And when you come out and you talk about the inconsistency or the lack of continuity on the offensive line, that's not necessarily something that is conducive to winning. When you talk about a team that gets to the red zone and they turn the ball over, play calls ain't got nothing to do with you turning the ball over. You're turning the ball over because you're not executing or you're trying to force things that you shouldn't. They always seem to turn the ball over when they're in scoring territory. That's not a good thing that is conducive to winning. Missed tackles, whiffing on blocks. If you want to talk about play calls, here's something that I'll give you. 3rd and 1, throwing the ball. I think they threw it on 3rd and 1 because they knew there was a 2-down territory. And if you run it on the 1st down and you don't make it, now they know you're throwing it on 4th down. Or you run it on 3rd down and don't make it, they know you got to throw it on 4th down. If you come out, they don't know what you're doing, running or throwing on 3rd down, then there you go. There's your chance right there to go ahead and try to pass the ball. But tip ball to the wrong guy because of pressure, because the offensive line isn't blocking very well. And guess what? Turnover. These things happen more than they should for a team that tries to win the championship. I don't think if Trevor's banged up, I don't think he's going to be able to fix it before the end of the year. So the question is, can this team win with him being banged up? They can win some games, sure. I'm already to the point, though, that I don't think they can win the Super Bowls. And the reason why is I don't think they can win a championship. And they might. And I'm going to still pull for them, and I'm going to be optimistic. I just don't like – and so Doug said this, and I don't like teams that lose the same way all the time, where there's a blueprint. And that blueprint is one of the basic principles of football, and that is being able to block people. I just don't think you can win when you can't block people unless – you're superlative in these other areas, and in those areas, the ones that count, and quarterback is one of them. A guy just is hot and he's on fire, and if you blitz him, you're going to get in trouble, and if you don't, he's going to run and he's going to find he's going to make all the right moves, a la Joe Burrow in getting them to the Super Bowl a couple of years back against the Rams. Well, if Trevor's banged up, he can't do that. And if one of the reasons he's banged up is because he was running from pressure, and everybody gets hurt because it's football if they get tackled eventually. But the likelihood that you're going to get hurt if you're a quarterback, if your offensive line can't block, the likelihood goes up. And that's exactly what happened. In my opinion, everything ties together. Win as many games as you can this year. Try to get hot, try to make a run, try to catch people on a bad day. Hope your defense can force people into a bad day and you can make plays with your skill position players, and anything can happen. But for the long-term sustainability of this franchise, they got to get more physical up front and they got to fix the line. And I don't know how easy that it is. I know the Chiefs did it in one offseason, but I think the Jaguars have other needs that they'll have to address, and they won't be able to use all of that draft capital on just offensive linemen. We'll just have to see. Hopefully they can win this game this Sunday against the Tennessee Titans, get back on track. Trevor can silence the critics. The questions are getting bigger and bigger. Can he lift this team up on his back? And right now, I just want to know, can he just rise up off the turf? Because he's been down there a lot lately. And can he rise up off the turf and simultaneously lift this team to victory over the long haul? We'll just have to see, man. But hopefully, safe travels to the game. Enjoy your tailgates this weekend. Enjoy beating up, because I don't care what our situation is. It's always good to beat up on the Titans. Make sure you do that and do that safe with all of your family. Enjoy the game. We'll have a postcast on Sunday within an hour after the game ending. Remember now, Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Friday's edition, I'm on there with my man David Harrison. We're talking about the quarterbacks, the injured quarterbacks of the AFC North. And you want to hear that as a Jaguar fan, because we got to play. We've already beat Pittsburgh. They got the other three teams. All three teams are playoff teams, and it looks like all three of them may have some significant injuries. Two at the quarterback position and one at a very, very important position in Baltimore with the tight end Mark Andrews. So, and Odell Beckham got a little banged up too. So we'll see how that plays out. Take a look at the games this weekend and see if this daunting schedule and daunting stretch that the Jaguars have, if somehow, some way, gets a little bit easier while they try to make sure Trevor Lawrence can stay healthy. You guys make sure you take care of each other. I'll do the same here on Locked On Jaguars. And we'll see you Sunday for a postcast, and then, of course, every day next week, because it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen.